The twin suns of Uldar burned high in the sky, their heat pressing down on the broken land like a cruel hand. The battlefield stretched wide across the dry plains, covered with black smoke, shattered vehicles, and broken banners of fallen armies. The smell of burning metal mixed with the stench of spilled blood, heavy in the air, clinging to every breath. Among the ruins moved the Cortil soldiers. They were proud warriors, tall and broad, covered in thick plates of natural armor that grew from their bodies. Their claws could tear through steel, and their voices roared like thunder. They had marched across dozens of worlds and crushed enemies who thought themselves strong, and now, on this day, they faced a new opponent. Humans. To the Cortil, humans were nothing special. They looked small, weak, their bodies fragile compared to the towering frames of most galactic species. Their bones could break easily. Their skin tore with little effort. Some called them the soft ones. Others called them the thin bloods. Myths of human toughness were often dismissed as exaggerations. Stories of their wars were laughed at, considered primitive tales, but that laughter died on the battlefield of Uldar. The narrator, one soldier among the Cortil ranks, remembered how it began. Their legion advanced with confidence. Rows upon rows of armored Cortil marched across the plains, weapons ready, voices raised in battle cries. Dust rose around their feet, and the sound of their march echoed like a storm rolling across the land. Victory seemed certain, and then it happened. The first sound was strange. It was not the roar of artillery. It was not the scream of energy weapons. It was sharp, clean, and distant, like a snap of air breaking apart. A single crack. One soldier fell. His name was Vakar, one of the strongest among them, carrying a heavy weapon that could melt steel walls. He was speaking when it happened, giving orders to those behind him. His voice stopped mid-word. A hole appeared in his chest, blood pouring out in a sudden bloom of red against the pale dirt. His body dropped without ceremony. Confusion followed. The soldiers around him froze, looking in every direction. There was no explosion, no flash of energy, no sign of an enemy weapon. Only the silent body of their brother lying on the ground. Before anyone could understand, the sound came again. Another crack. Another soldier dropped, this time through the throat. His roar became a gurgle as he collapsed. Panic began to spread like fire. The commander shouted for order, raising his voice above the chaos. "It is nothing! A single enemy! Do not fear!" His words carried authority, but the soldiers' eyes betrayed them. They were afraid because it did not stop. Another crack, another soldier gone, then another, and another, always one at a time. Always clean, precise. No wasted shot, no wildfire. Just death, choosing carefully. The narrator felt the fear in his chest grow heavy. He had fought insect swarms that charged without fear. He had battled reptilian brutes, twice his size, their claws like swords. He had faced machines that felt no pain. None of them had ever made him feel like this. This was not war. This was something else. It was as if an unseen predator had entered the battlefield, invisible and patient, picking its prey one by one. Each crack of sound carried more terror than a full barrage of artillery, because artillery killed in chaos. This was personal. Each shot was a finger pointing, a judgment delivered from somewhere far away. The Cortil were strong, but strength did not matter. Their armor was thick, but it did not matter. Their roars shook the sky, but no roar could silence that one sound. Crack, another soldier. Crack, another. The legion slowed, the dust settled. The proud march became hesitation, then confusion, then fear, for the first time in his long years of battle. The narrator felt something he had never admitted before. He felt hunted. He felt small. And though none of them could yet see it, though the enemy lay hidden in the distance, pressed into the dirt with cold patience, a single truth had already begun to carve itself into their hearts. This was not just an enemy. This was a human sniper. The death of Vakar echoed in the minds of every soldier like a bell that would not stop ringing. His body lay still on the dirt, his weapon useless beside him. He had been the strongest among them, the kind of warrior who made others feel safe, just by standing near. And yet, he was gone in a single breath, without warning, without even seeing the enemy who killed him. The Cortil soldiers froze at first. Their eyes scanned the ridges, the broken ground, the clouds of smoke that drifted lazily through the air. They expected an enemy line. They expected dozens of guns firing from the horizon. But there was nothing, only silence, broken by the hiss of wind and the faint crackle of burning wrecks. And then it happened again. Another sound, sharp and clean, like a whip splitting the sky. A soldier near the narrator fell to his knees, clawed hands clutching his throat. He tried to speak, but no words came out, only a choking gurgle, wet and final. Blood bubbled through his fingers. His eyes met the narrator's for a heartbeat, wide with confusion and fear, before the light inside them went out. 2 soldiers dead, 2 shots. Now the line began to break. The commander roared for control, his voice strong, his authority clear. "Hold formation. It is only one of them. Do not scatter." His words carried weight, but fear was stronger. Some soldiers began to shuffle backward, their feet dragging through the dirt. Others crouched low, pressing themselves against shattered vehicles or fallen stone, trying to make their bodies smaller targets. The narrator's heart pounded. He was no stranger to battle. He had felt the rush of charging into enemy fire, the heavy clash of blades and claws, the thunder of artillery. But this was different. There was no rush, no clash, no thunder. Only the waiting, only the fear of the next shot, and it came. Crack. A medic collapsed, the top of his head gone in a spray of blood and bone. The healers were always the next target. Even in chaos, the sniper thought carefully. First the leaders, then the medics, then the heavy weapons. The strongest points of the army were cut away one by one. The realization spread through the Cortil ranks like poison. This was not random fire. This was not luck. This was deliberate. Someone out there was watching them, choosing them, studying them like pieces on a board, and every shot was a move closer to victory. The narrator pressed his body lower into the dirt, claws digging into the dry earth. His eyes scanned the far ridge, and for just a moment, through the haze of smoke and dust, he thought he saw something. A flicker of movement, a shape pressed low to the ground. The human. He lay so still it was hard to believe he was alive. His body blended into the earth. His weapon, long and slender, stretched across the rocks like part of the land itself. His face was painted, colors of earth and shadow smeared across his skin. He looked less like a soldier and more like a ghost. And then, for the smallest fraction of time, the human's eye lifted to the glass of his weapon. A glint of light caught it, and the narrator felt his heart freeze. The eye looked through the scope. The scope looked at him. He had never felt such terror, not from monsters, not from machines, not even from the endless swarms of the insectoid races. This was different. This was personal. He was seen. He was chosen. But the shot did not come. The crack echoed again, but the soldier beside him fell instead. A hole where his skull had been. The narrator's body shook with relief and horror all at once. The sniper had spared him, not out of mercy, but because he had chosen another. The truth hit him with the weight of a mountain. They were not fighting a soldier. They were fighting death itself, wearing the shape of a human. The commander tried again to rally them, but the cracks kept coming. Soldiers fell one by one, the formation collapsing like sand in the wind. The fear grew unbearable. They wanted to charge, to do something, anything. But to move meant to die. To stand meant to die. The battlefield was no longer theirs. It belonged to the hidden eye behind the glass, and in that moment, every Corps soldier understood a terrible truth. One human, just one, was enough to stop a legion. The battlefield had fallen into a strange rhythm. Every few minutes, the same sound would tear through the silence. A single crack, clean and sharp. Then a soldier would fall. Always one. Always chosen. No wasted shot. No second chance. At first, the Corps thought it was random luck, a hidden weapon firing blindly. But slowly, with each body that hit the ground, the truth began to show itself. This was no luck. This was strategy. The commander barked for the heavy gunners to prepare their weapons. But before the order could spread, one of the gunners fell, his chest blown open by an unseen bullet. The others froze. It was as if the sniper had been listening, as if he had known the command before it was spoken. Next came the medics. Any soldier who knelt beside a fallen comrade to heal or lift them was cut down within seconds. No healer survived more than a breath before the crack split the air and ended their effort. Leaders, medics, heavy gunners, all chosen first. The narrator watched this unfold with a growing chill in his chest. He had lived through many wars, had studied many enemies, but never had he seen such careful, patient killing. This was not just battle, it was control. The sniper was shaping the fight, cutting away the pieces that mattered most, leaving the rest to wither. Fear grew heavier with every shot. Soldiers no longer dared to move, no longer dared to shout. Even speaking felt dangerous, as if raising one's voice might draw the attention of that distant glass eye. The commander tried again to gather courage in his soldiers. He raised his clawed hand and roared, "One human cannot stop us all! Rise! Charge forward!" But no one moved, because every soldier knew what the next crack would bring. The sniper always chose the loud ones first. And indeed, before the commander could finish his speech, the sound rang out again. His head jerked back, a red spray painting the air. His body collapsed with heavy weight, armor crashing into the dirt. Silence followed. The Corps warriors looked at one another, but there was no strength in their eyes now, only fear. If the commander could fall so quickly, what chance did the rest of them have? The narrator pressed his body low, every muscle trembling. He felt the sun burning on his back, but he did not dare move to shade. He kept his breathing, shallow as though even the rise of his chest might betray him. He thought of the human sniper far on the ridge, lying still, breathing calm, watching, choosing. It was as though the human was not a man at all, but a spirit of war, patient and cruel. Each shot was not just death, it was a message. It told them where they could not go, what they could not do, who they could no longer rely on. The sniper was not fighting them with bullets alone. He was fighting them with fear. The narrator's claws dug into the dirt until they bled. He wanted to roar, to charge, to do something. But his body refused to move. Every instinct screamed at him to stay still, to hide, to make himself invisible. And that was when the realization truly hit him. The Corps had always believed themselves the predators of the galaxy. They hunted others, they broke armies, they conquered worlds. But here, on this burning plain, they were the prey. And the human, the small, fragile human, was the hunter. Every shot carved this truth deeper. They were not fighting for victory anymore. They were fighting for survival, and even that was slipping away. For the first time in his life, the narrator understood what hopelessness felt like. Not because they were outnumbered, not because they were outgunned, but because somewhere out there, beyond their sight, one human was looking at them through glass, and deciding who would live and who would die. And he knew, sooner or later, his turn would come. The battlefield was no longer a place of war. It was a place of waiting, of fear. Smoke hung in the air like a shroud, and the cries of the wounded rose and fell in broken waves. The proud Cortil Legion had become a field of scattered shapes, some hiding, some lying still, others frozen in place like statues. The narrator pressed himself into the dirt. The dry soil scratched against his armored skin, filling the cracks between his plates. Every breath carried dust into his lungs, making it hard to stay silent. But he did not dare cough. He did not dare move too fast. He had faced many battles before, but this was the first time he crawled like prey. His 4 limbs, usually strong and confident, now shook as they dragged him forward inch by inch. Every movement felt loud, even though the battlefield was already full of noise. His heart thudded so hard, he feared it could be heard across the plains. Somewhere out there, the sniper waited. The narrator did not know how far. He only knew the human was watching. Every soldier who stood too tall had already been struck down. Every medic who tried to help had been silenced. The unseen eye behind the glass seemed to know every thought, every intention. Still, he crawled. Ahead lay the broken shell of a transport vehicle, its frame torn open by artillery fire earlier in the battle. He aimed for it, desperate for stronger cover. The dirt clung to him, the heat of the suns burning against his back. But he forced himself forward. To his left, another soldier tried the same. The warrior rose slightly higher, moving too quickly, desperate to reach the shadows. The sound came. Crack! The soldier's body jerked once and then collapsed, motionless. The narrator froze, his body pressed flat to the ground. The dust rose from the dead comrade's fall and drifted slowly in the air. The narrator did not blink, did not move, afraid that the shifting of his own shadow would invite death. Minutes passed, or maybe seconds. Time no longer felt real. When his heart slowed enough, he continued his crawl, inch by inch, claw by claw. The ruined transport was closer now, its twisted metal forming a jagged wall. He reached its edge and pressed his body against it, chest heaving with the effort of holding his fear inside. He risked a glance, just for a moment, and that was when he saw him. On the ridge, far away, almost invisible among the rocks and smoke, there lay the human. His body was flat against the earth, blended perfectly with the colors of the land. His face was painted in streaks of brown and green, shadows hiding his features. The long rifle rested steady in his hands, as though it were a natural part of him. The human did not move. He did not twitch, did not fidget, did not even shift under the burning suns. He was still, too still. And then, the human's head tilted just slightly. The glass eye of his weapon turned. The narrator felt it before he even saw it. The weight of being seen. The unbearable knowledge that he was in the sniper's sight. Every instinct screamed at him to run, but he could not. He was caught, pinned by that invisible gaze. His claws dug into the dirt until they bled. He prayed silently, not to be chosen, not yet. The sound split the air, but it was not him. The soldier next to the transport, who had lifted his head a little higher, fell instantly. A hole where his skull had been. His body dropped against the metal with a hollow clang, sliding slowly to the ground. The narrator's breath rushed out in a shudder. He was alive, but only because the sniper had spared him. Not out of kindness, not out of mercy, but because, in that moment, the human had chosen another. The realization struck harder than any weapon. Life and death here were not in the hands of the Cortil. They were not in the claws of commanders, nor the power of armies. Life and death belonged to that one human, lying silent in the distance. The sniper decided. The sniper chose. And sooner or later, the sniper would choose him. The battlefield was no longer a place of battle. It was a graveyard waiting to be filled. The Cortil had once marched with pride, their steps heavy and unshaken, their voices strong. But now they moved like shadows, crawling, hiding, trembling. The ground that once shook under their charge now felt hollow, weak, empty. The narrator pressed against the broken transport, his chest still heaving from the crawl. Around him, soldiers whispered in broken voices. Some muttered prayers to their war gods. Others cursed the human in the distance, their words bitter but hollow. None of them truly believed their own voices anymore. Fear had become their only commander. Then came the desperate order. "Charge!" one surviving officer roared, his voice strained, almost desperate. "We must reach him! One man cannot stop us all! Move forward now!" The command cut through the silence, and for a moment, the old instinct returned. The warriors were trained to follow, to obey, to fight. Dozens of them rose from their hiding places, their roars shaking the smoke-filled air. They charged across, the plain, claws digging into the dirt, weapons ready, their anger pushing them forward. For a moment, hope flickered. Perhaps they could overwhelm him. Perhaps if they moved fast enough, the sniper would not kill them all. And then the cracks came. 1, 2, 3. Each shot was faster than thought, each one dropping another warrior mid-run. The charge broke almost instantly. Warriors stumbled, tripped over the bodies of their fallen, fell into the dirt with screams that were cut short by more cracks. The sniper's bullets guided them like invisible hands, pushing them back, breaking their line before it could even form. The narrator saw it happen with wide, horrified eyes. It was not a battle. It was a slaughter. He pressed himself lower as the charging soldiers were reduced to bodies scattered across the field. Their weapons never reached the ridge. Their roars never reached the sniper. The human had chosen the order of their deaths long before they had moved. Silence followed, heavy and final. The few who survived the charge stumbled back, collapsing. Behind cover, their armor scratched, their spirits broken. No one tried again. No one dared. Another group tried a different path. They attempted to flank, crawling slowly, circling wide, thinking they could reach the ridge from the side. The narrator watched them with quiet hope. Maybe this time. Maybe if they moved carefully, the sniper would not see. But of course he saw. One by one, the cracks came again, and one by one they dropped. The survivors lay flat, pressed into the dirt, too afraid to move another step. They did not try again. It was then that the truth settled fully into the narrator's chest. They could not reach him. They could not outsmart him. They could not even make him waste a shot. He was in control, and they were only his prey. Some of the warriors broke. Fear overcame training. They rose and fled, running across the plains in the opposite direction, abandoning the battle entirely. Their bodies did not last long. The sniper picked them off as easily as the rest. Running made no difference. Hiding made no difference. Nothing made a difference. The narrator's claws shook as he pressed them against the metal wall beside him. He had thought himself strong. He had thought his people unbreakable. But here, against one human with a rifle, he felt the truth. They were already broken. The others around him began to whisper of surrender, of laying down weapons. But how could you surrender to an enemy you could not see? How could you yield to death itself? No white flag could stop the next bullet. No cry for mercy could reach the ears of the man hidden in the dirt. The narrator closed his eyes, trying to block out the sight of his fallen comrades. But he could not block out the sound. That sound haunted him more than anything, the clean, sharp crack that came again and again. Every shot was not just a death. Every shot was a reminder. They were powerless. They had no control. Their fate belonged to one human, lying silent and patient on a ridge. And in that moment, The narrator felt something he had never felt before. Not anger, not fury, not even sadness. He felt despair, because there was nothing left to fight for. No path to victory, no hope of survival. Only the waiting, the endless waiting, until the sniper finally chose him. The cracks had ruled the battlefield for what felt like forever. Each one had come like thunder, sudden and final. But then, at last, the sound stopped. No more bullets split the air. No more bodies fell. At first, the survivors did not notice. Their minds had become so used to the rhythm of death that silence felt unnatural. They still flinched at shadows, still pressed their bodies lower, expecting the next shot to come, but it never did. The narrator lay with his cheek against the dirt, his heart still beating hard in his chest. Sweat trickled down his neck, stinging his eyes, but he dared not move to wipe it away. He waited, certain the pause was only a trick, a test. Perhaps the human was waiting for someone to rise, to think it was safe, and then the crack would return. Minutes stretched, then more. The battlefield held its breath. Finally, the narrator raised his head just slightly. His eyes scanned the ridge where he had last seen the sniper. The place was empty. The rocks were bare. The human was gone. Slowly, carefully, other soldiers began to stir. Their movements were timid, weak, more like wounded animals than proud warriors. Some crawled out from behind broken walls, others lifted their heads from the dirt. They looked around with wide, hollow eyes. None spoke. None dared to break the silence. The battlefield was unrecognizable. What had begun as a march of power, a legion strong enough to shake the ground, was now a field of broken shapes. Bodies lay scattered everywhere, their armor cracked, their blood soaking into the dust. Smoke drifted low over the dead, carrying the bitter smell of failure. The survivors gathered slowly, as if afraid even of each other's movements. They looked at the fallen, but no one had words. No prayer came to their lips, no oath of vengeance. What words could they say? What oath could they make? They had not been defeated by an army. They had not been outnumbered, nor overwhelmed by superior strength. They had been undone by one man. The narrator's claws trembled as he touched the ground beside him. He remembered every moment, the first shot that took Vakar, the way the medics fell before they could help. The commander's roar cut short by a single bullet. He remembered the eyes of his comrades, wide with fear, as they dropped one after another. And most of all, he remembered the feeling of being seen. That single instant when the sniper's glass eye found him, when his life hung on the edge of a decision he could not control. That memory weighed heavier than any scar. Some of the soldiers began to whisper. They asked each other why the sniper had left. Had he run out of ammunition? Had he simply grown bored of killing them? Or had he spared them deliberately, leaving them alive only to carry the memory of his power? The narrator did not know. He only knew the silence felt worse than the gunfire. The shots had been terrifying, but at least they were certain. Now every breath, every step, carried the question, would the sound return? Was the sniper truly gone? Or was he watching still, waiting for them to believe they were safe? Hours passed before they dared to rise fully. The survivors walked among the bodies of their fallen, counting, searching, hoping for someone still breathing. But there were few. More than half the legion was gone. Entire squads had been erased by single bullets. The narrator looked at their faces, warriors who had once stood tall, warriors who had once believed nothing could break them. Now they were only shapes in the dirt, robbed of life by an enemy they never even touched. The survivors did not cheer their survival. They did not thank their luck. There was no pride left in them. Only shame. Only silence. For the first time, the narrator felt the weight of despair not just as a soldier, but as a being. His people had always thought themselves hunters, conquerors, strong beyond measure. But against a human sniper, they had been reduced to prey, hiding in the dirt, begging for a life they could not keep. The silence after the battle was not peace. It was a wound, a scar carved into the hearts of every survivor. It was the echo of a truth they could never forget. Their power had meant nothing. Their numbers had meant nothing. And somewhere out there, beyond the smoke and the ridges, the sniper was walking away, alive, calm, victorious. One man, one rifle, a legion undone. The suns of Uldar dipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the battlefield. The smoke had thinned, the fires burned lower, but the silence remained. It was not the silence of peace. It was the silence of defeat, heavy and bitter, pressing down on every survivor like a weight they could not lift. The narrator stood slowly, his legs weak beneath him. His armor was cracked, his claws bloodied from crawling in the dirt, but his body still lived. Around him, other survivors moved the same way, quiet, broken, their steps unsteady. They gathered in small groups, staring at one another with hollow eyes. None spoke, none dared. What words could they share? What comfort could they offer? They had not faced an army. They had not clashed in honorable combat. They had been hunted, one, by a single human lying in the dirt with a rifle. The narrator looked at the field around him. So many of his kin lay still, their bodies twisted, their weapons untouched. Some had fallen mid-charge, their faces frozen in rage that had been cut short in an instant. Others lay sprawled in the dirt, eyes wide with disbelief, never understanding what had killed them. The medic, the commander, the strongest among them, all gone. And somewhere out there, the sniper had walked away alive. The narrator felt the truth sink deeper into his heart. The Cortil were known as predators. For generations they had conquered, they had hunted, they had bent worlds to their will. They believed themselves unbreakable. But here, in one afternoon, a single human had broken them. Not with numbers, not with firepower, not with ships or machines, but with patience, with precision, with control. That was the true weapon of the sniper. Not the rifle, not the bullet, but the fear. The way he chose each target. The way he erased the leaders, the medics, the strong, leaving the rest to crumble. He had not only killed bodies, he had killed courage. He had stolen the fight from them before they even realized it. The narrator closed his eyes, and the memory came back. The moment when the sniper's glass eye had found him, when he felt the weight of being chosen. That feeling haunted him, more than the death around him. In that instant, his life had not been his own. It had belonged to the sniper. One squeeze of a finger, and everything he was would have ended. That was the lesson carved into his soul. To face a sniper was not to fight. It was to surrender control of your life to another being, one who decided if you lived or died. The survivors left the field slowly, dragging their feet, unable to lift their heads. They carried no victory songs, no pride, no vows of revenge, only silence, only the weight of what they had seen. The narrator knew he would carry it forever. He would tell others of this day, though many would not believe him. They would laugh, just as he once had, at the idea of humans being dangerous. They would speak of fragile bones and soft flesh. They would dismiss the stories of snipers as myths, exaggerations of war. But he knew better. He had seen one man halt an army. He had seen fear spread faster than fire, stronger than blades. He had seen warriors, proud and unshaken, crawl in the dirt like prey animals, too afraid to raise their heads. The galaxy might never understand. But he did. Humans were not the largest, nor the strongest, nor the most advanced. Yet they carried something inside them that could break even the hardest armies. A cold patience, a ruthless focus, a will that could outlast fear itself. The narrator looked one last time at the battlefield. The suns dipped lower, shadows stretched longer, and the silence pressed harder. He whispered to himself, though no one was near enough to hear, no alien should ever face a human sniper, and he knew, with every scar on his soul, that it was the truth.